I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Scarlet Knights fans, welcome to another episode of Night Watch. I'm your host, Larry K. If you haven't done so yet, please click subscribe. It's right here. It takes a second. Just click it. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers, bringing you Rutgers content on a consistent basis. And I have some big news for you soon, which is really just my new place of domicile for my print, actual written work on Rutgers athletics. I just want to have a weekend recap here, discuss the goings-on of men's basketball and Rutgers football this weekend. I briefly touched on it yesterday with a post-game reaction video regarding the Rutgers loss to Iowa, 22-0. But, I just came from a basketball game, too. The men's basketball team did go 2-0 this weekend against Boston University, and then today against Bryant. That's where I just came from. First, to discuss the football team. Look, painful showing. And I wanted to point out something that Aaron Brightman said recently in his game recap. And he pointed out that perhaps part of the issue with the showing against Iowa was that Rutgers really emptied the tank, so to speak, against Ohio State. And you could see that to an extent. And he said himself that it wasn't the sole reason why they performed that way or the sole reason why they lost the game or got shut out, but it certainly might have played a factor. And upon further reflection from me, I think that definitely has something to do with it, right? You empty your tank completely against Ohio State. You exert yourself as much as you can. You lay it all on the line. You take your bumps. You take your bruises. You fight to the death. You wind up losing, and it takes a lot out of you. You're going on the road into Iowa. Was a very hostile environment, and people can underplay the crowd all they want. We want to give ourselves credit when we're loud at the rack or whatever else, but we don't want to give another crowd credit. Give Iowa's fans credit out there in Iowa City. They were loud. They were into the game from the beginning, and it led to a lot of mistakes against our guys. But you go into that hostile environment. Everybody's telling you, if you do that well against Ohio State, of course you could line up and beat Iowa because Iowa stinks. The fact that they only have 2 losses and are in the Big Ten West lead means nothing because according to some people, Iowa's offense is so pathetic that they don't have a chance against you. I'm not saying the team listened to the headlines or clippings, but I'm sure some of that mentality seeped in a little bit, and it certainly seemed like it seeped into the coaching staff. You go into Iowa, and it's not how things go. Now, I predicted a 17-10 win from Rutgers because I thought we would have some semblance of an offense, and I thought our defense might set us up for a score or get a score on a turnover. That didn't happen. What did happen from looking at the game from my standpoint, I put this loss, look, man-to-man, you're getting out-executed in the trenches. I think that some of that's a holdover from the Ohio State game, but I said in my pregame preview that I was worried that this might go over like the Wisconsin game went over, where you have a traditional team that's tough and strong in the trenches that we simply can't compete with and outman in that regard. And that is kind of what came to fruition. Now, even though the game was close going into the fourth quarter, it was only 6-0 Iowa. You could tell from the first play of the game that Iowa, they were running the ball better than we were running the ball. Their line was imposing its will a bit on our line. Now, for most of the game, it didn't result in a bunch of points for Iowa. But at a certain time, it did. And here's what I saw in that game. Iowa kind of shot themselves in the foot early in the game when they tried to throw the ball after they had been running the ball pretty well on us the first few drives. And once Iowa got behind the sticks, same as us, very similar team to us, right? Just a little bit better, I think. Played a little bit better, and they were at home. But they run the ball down and get into plus territory, and then they try to throw the ball, and that stalled some drives for them. They wound up, in 2nd and 10, and then they couldn't run their way out of that a couple times. We get the ball, and early in that game, we're running the ball okay, but we're not running the ball like they were. We weren't getting 7 yards a clip. But we were getting 4 yards a clip, putting us in decent positions. A couple times at, when it was unexpected, we dropped back. Gavin Wimsatt threw the ball, and he completed his first few passes. Looked nice. We were moving down the field. And some want to blame it on coaching, that we didn't throw it on 3rd and long. Some want to blame it on Gavin because they don't trust him, so they didn't throw it on 3rd and long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Plain fact of the matter is, they had a 3rd down where they threw it early. He converted. They had some nice throws early. He looked like he was on. Penalties killed us early in that game. Plain and simple. You can blame it on the crowd because the crowd was certainly involved. You could blame it on nerves. You could blame it on just whatever you want to blame it on. A hangover from Ohio State, whatever it was. Maybe the trench play, getting our guys on their heels a little bit. Whatever it was. Penalties killed us. You had 2 penalties in a row when the first time we got in plus territory and looked like we were putting a nice drive together. 2 penalties in a row, and now you're backed up. We don't have it in the playbook, whether Gavin's on or not. We don't really have it in the playbook to drop back and throw something to convert a 3rd and long of that magnitude, especially when Jaquay Jackson went out. And by the way, Jackson going out absolutely crippled that passing game too. Because guys who actually get consistent separation are limited in this offense. Okay? And when Jackson goes out, that's a huge weapon that the defense no longer has to account for. That absolutely affected play calling and absolutely affected our offense. There's no way it didn't. Okay? And don't tell me that throw was too high, this and that. That was a little bit of high throw, but that throw gets completed a lot of times. It happens in the NFL. It happens everywhere. It was in his hands. Good play by the defender. Unfortunate result that he got hurt. But when we're backed up with 2 penalties in a row and the line's on their heels, it's not the time to drop back and throw. You could wind up with a sack. You could wind up with a turnover. And it doesn't just have to be an interception. It could have been a fumble. It could be all kinds of things. So the right call is to run there and to punt it and to pin them deep. And early in the game, before it kind of broke open a little bit later, that pin them down kind of worked a little bit. Up until we had a sack negated by a defensive holding call on Max Melton. And I didn't like it. I got to be honest with you, because the drive immediately before that, there was a blatant pass interference that was not called on our guys. And we wound up punting the ball to them. We get a nice sack, and it's negated by a soft defensive holding call. And that catapulted Iowa to their first 3 points. And sad as it is, in this kind of game, the team who draws first blood was going to go on and do much better and probably had a great chance of winning that game because just of the way the offenses play. It just is what it is. So that happened. And then, look, Kyle Monangai was questionable coming into the game, and he was clearly banged up. After a block late in the game, he didn't come back into the game. I hope he's okay. If he needs rest, he might as well get it against Penn State. Hopefully he's back for a bowl game, because it can mean some pride for this program to win a bowl game, put another trophy in that case at the Hale Center. But he came in not 100%. So he wasn't going to be able to carry the load the same way as he had in the previous games. And not only that, but the line wasn't playing as well as they had in recent games. Not as well as they had against Indiana. Not as well as they had against Ohio State. And so, we didn't have our best playmaker, our best weapon in Kyle Monangai to carry the load because he was banged up. And he carried the load as best he could on a few of those early drives. He was getting 5 yards. He was getting a tough 6 yards. But you can't ask him to do much more than that. Sam Brown, I don't know if it's the new scheme. Somebody mentioned perhaps the new scheme that Shiraka has brought in is not working for Sam Brown. But I don't know if he's hobbled. I don't know if he hasn't gotten in a rhythm. I don't know if it's the scheme. Sam Brown's not the same player we saw, for a piece of last year. I hope and expect that will change. He's still a young player. I know people don't want to hear about young players right now in Rutgers world, but he's a young player. I hope he can bounce back, but he doesn't have the it factor this year. He just hasn't had it yet. Hope that changes, but he hasn't had it yet. So you put Sam Brown in there, not much doing. You put Aaron Young in there. He gets a nice play on a 3rd down, I believe it was. Could have been a 4th down, don't remember. But, Aaron Young wasn't getting a lot of reps, too. So this is where I move into the second phase here. I think Rutgers was outcoached. I think Rutgers was clearly outcoached, okay, on both sides of the ball. There were times where we looked like we could run the ball inside and get solid 4 to 6 yards a carry. And the next thing you know, Shiraka's calling an odd like skip pitch to the outside, and it's getting stuffed for a loss. You know. Other times, I thought, he should have called design runs for Gavin Wimsatt. He wasn't doing it. He could have aired it out a little bit towards the end of the first half. Gavin seemed on. He was connecting. Give him a chance. Not that drive where we had 2 penalties in a row that backed us up, but other drives where it was third and longer. Throw the ball. Give it a shot. He looks like he was on target early in the game. Give it a shot. And then on defense, Iowa did what Rutgers should have done, in my opinion, what I'm criticizing Shiraka for not doing, which was they called pass plays and plays downfield and opened up their offense just enough at just the right times to catch us off guard and to get just enough yards and just as many plays as they needed to win that game and to break it open eventually, because all you needed was really 1 touchdown to break that game open, and they were able to do that. Now, the game should have been even more lopsided, except Max Melton came up with a nice pick at the end of that first half. Otherwise, that would have been a touchdown maybe, and we would have been going into the half 10-0. And the score would have been even worse, maybe going into the fourth or maybe at the end. I thought we were outcoached. Our guys did not look prepared, and that could be partly because of hangover from Ohio State. But the play calling on offense and defense, we started out with that zone. The rushing 3 on the third down was crazy to me early in the game. Harasimiak adjusted, but he simply did not out-adjust Ferentz on the other side of the ball. And we were outcoached on both sides of the ball. I think you can certainly say that. Just the game as a whole, there was nobody doing well, including the penalties. And that killed us. I just did not think we called the right plays at the right time, and I think Iowa did. They took gambles with their inconsistent quarterback, and it paid off, and we failed to do that with ours until the very end when it's a throw-or-die game. The defense knows it's coming, and the kid is inaccurate, and he's on a hostile road environment, then he just collapses. And the final line from Wimsatt, I believe it was 7 for 18. 7 for 18, 93 yards, no touchdowns, and interception. Look, Gavin Wimsatt, he's an inaccurate quarterback on the season. His numbers are not there. He's not going to win games for us. He's still a sophomore. He can do things with his legs. I think part of the other problem was we weren't calling design runs for him, but he wasn't making the right reads. There were several times, just as there have been all year, where Gavin should have tucked the ball and run, and he could have gotten a ton of yards, could have been a big play. He didn't do it. So his decision-making, both in the run game and in the pass game, leaves a lot to be desired. But you're in a tough spot, right? Because I remember watching the spring game. In the spring game, it looked to me like Simon was more accurate with his passes than Wimsatt was. I mean, I thought it was evident in the spring game. But that's just a spring game, and it was raining, and it was muddy, and this and that. Staff makes the decision that Gavin Wimsatt's the starter. He's a higher rated recruit. He's a big guy. He's got a hell of an arm, and he's got a ton of upside with his legs. They make that call. There's never really a competition. Simon comes in for one drive, does really well this season when Gavin got banged up. But Gavin comes right back in. He's the starter. Now, you're in a position now where I say, okay, in a lot of situations, I'd say, look, Wimsatt's not getting it done. He leaves a lot to be desired. He's still young. He can wake up for a competition later. Why don't you sit him? Give Simon a chance against Penn State. We're not supposed to win anyway. See what he does. If he's that much head and shoulders better, maybe you roll with him. But see, the problem is this season with doing something like that is you got to look at the whole situation. Simon now has been passed over on this team. So I would say there's strong indications that Simon may well transfer out after this year. So does he even want to burn his shirt this year when he may transfer? That's number one. And I don't know. I don't pretend to know. Number two is, despite what some say, part of the reason we're bowl eligible, part of the reason we've won certain games has to do with Gavin Wimsatt. His running ability, his dynamic presence on the field, and how it works in this offense, creates points. And has created points more than once. Number two, you've seen serious glimpses, and not just glimpses of like a pass here or there, but you've seen it over time, his ability to convert touchdowns, to lead drives, to make certain key plays with his arm when you need him to, because the talent is there and the physical skill is there. Do you believe as a coaching staff that since he's a sophomore and he improved exponentially from redshirt freshman to redshirt sophomore year, that he's going to also improve exponentially from sophomore to junior year? And what's more, you have a very talented quarterback coming in Sarace as a true freshman next year. Are you in a position this late in the year where overall the season's been a success? I know people are sitting there saying, well, if we only had a better quarterback, this could have been a great year. We would have the schedule lined up perfectly. We could have been great. But how great do you think we would have been? Do you really think we beat Michigan? We beat Wisconsin? Maybe you do, because it was a pick six that changed the game in Wisconsin. I don't think so. I don't think we beat Michigan. Yeah, with a world-beating quarterback, sure. With just a marginally better quarterback, I don't know. And now the season has been a success in terms of being bowl eligible, winning the games we were supposed to win, seeing strides on all facets of the team, being competitive. I mean, go back to the beginning of the season. Just go back in your own head to the beginning of the season. Don't be a fan for a second. Just be rational and objective. Go back to the beginning of the season. And 9 out of 10 people said, what is a successful season for Rutgers football this year? 9 out of 10 people said to go to a bowl game and to look competitive in our losses against the big dogs. To go to a bowl game and look competitive in our losses against the big dogs. And what were most pundits saying about this team? 4 to 5 wins is the ceiling. 4 to 5 wins is the most likely. 4 to 5 wins, 4 to 5 wins, 4 to 5 wins. If they get 6 wins, that'll be astounding. That'll be great. Well, we got 6 wins and we look competitive in our all losses. Am I sitting here trying to, ring the moral victory, bell? No. But I'm being realistic about the expectations. It puts the coaches in a tough spot. You expect them to just sit a kid, or publicly want to move on from a kid, or try to go out and find some non-existent portal QB who's instantly going to be an upgrade. And I think it's a stretch. Doesn't mean Gavin's been good. He's been below average as a thrower this year. As a runner, he's been above average. He's met expectations. Not yesterday, but on the season. As a thrower, he's been below average, period. But who else is out there? And when the season is a large success and the coaching staff is developing somebody, is it the right time to sit somebody? I don't think they're in a position where they could do that. We'll see. I'm not going to cry about it if they put Simon in, they sit him. I don't put that whole loss on him against Iowa. It's funny because the beginning of the game, he's looking sharp, and everybody's saying just in general, look at the false starts, look at the play calls. But by the end of the game, he had enough questionable throws that everybody could go to the comforting narrative, which is Gavin's the reason we lose. And people like comforting narratives. If you could pin it on one specific coach, one specific player, then the fix is easier in their head, so it's easier to do that. You want to do that. You have a tendency to gravitate towards blaming it on one person, reinforcing the narrative, bolstering the narrative, because it makes you feel better. But the truth is, this team, and there's some lapses on defense throughout this season too, despite how highly touted they've been, this team is not there yet. And the quarterback's a big part of it. And if they can upgrade, upgrade. I just don't know that they can. And I'm also not the person who is completely convinced that this kid can't progress and can't get better as an upperclassman in his junior and senior years. Mike Teal wasn't good his freshman and sophomore year. Go look at the stats. He wasn't good. Gary Nova wasn't good. He was on and off. I'm not saying Wimsatt's going to be as good as either one of them when it's all said and done. I'm not saying he's the answer. I'm just saying Don't get so far ahead of yourself. You know, this is the first season we're bowl eligible in years. The first season we look competitive with these Big Ten powers ever. Ever. And people are out here clamoring that Greg Schiano is a subpar coach and Gavin Wimsatt needs to just be kicked to the curb. I mean, it's a little bit excessive. It's a little bit much. We still have a chance to beat Maryland and have 7 wins on the season. That's a hell of an accomplishment when you look at the preseason expectations. We're going to a bowl game. We have a chance to win one. Relax a little bit. I'm just asking you to. And by the way, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe. It's right here. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, too, with regard to season expectations is look at these teams that we manhandled and beat convincingly in the beginning of the year. Virginia Tech is a game away from being bowl eligible. They handle Boston College. Northwestern beat Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin didn't have their starting quarterback. If they didn't have their starting quarterback versus us, I bet we might have won too. So don't start saying, oh, Northwestern did it. It's a missed opportunity. You know what's not a missed opportunity? Beating Northwestern, who I told you, and I said earlier in this season, after those games, that Virginia Tech and Northwestern were not just slouch, terrible losses. Everybody wanted to poo-poo those wins early in the year. Oh, they're the worst team in the Power 5, worst team in the conference. Who cares? It's not a real test. Okay. Doesn't look that way now, does it? If those weren't a real test, then why did you expect us to beat Ohio State and why did you expect us to beat Iowa if those weren't a real test? They were a real test. We won. And you know who else was a real test? Iowa. They're number 22 in the country. They lost 2 games. They're a pretty good team. They're a tough team. They're tough in the trenches. They have been for generations. Yeah, their offense is not good this year. But a lot of factors went into play. We don't have a quarterback who can consistently throw the ball with accuracy. We have an offensive coordinator who seems 2 games in a row now to not call the right plays at the opportune times. We have an offensive line that appeared gassed. A great player, a great young man in Reggie Sutton who played his butt off. But now against Iowa, with just a really formidable team in the trenches, he struggled. He was even replaced at one point by Taj White. You have guys committing false start penalties, guys like Johnny Langan who never do that. I don't know what got into him. You have a banged-up star running back. By the way, only got 39 yards. So it wasn't like there was help, but it is what it is. You got a coaching staff who doesn't play Benjamin, hasn't played him since the beginning of the year, even though he looked good in the beginning of the year. Got no carries, Jashawn Benjamin. No carries. You got another running back who looked fierce and tough, and I don't care. Everybody can be down on him all they want. They're only down on him because the coaching staff is down on him. Al-Shadi Salam, who saved a touchdown on a punt return a few weeks ago. Salam, who recovered a near fumbled muff punt recovery this week, plays his butt off on special teams, willing to change the defense, looked good running the ball in garbage time earlier in the year, won us the game against Boston College, an elusive back. A hungry kid, a Jersey kid. He's not even in the running back room anymore. So there's a lot more to go around than just Gavin Wimsatt. The pitchforks and nonsense is a little much for this kid. But even though I'm calling out the coaching staff because they deserve to be, I hope they have some self-reflection. They need to learn too, and I'm sure they are. They need to adjust and learn from their own mistakes. But it's still a successful season, all these things considered. We still are going to a bowl. We still have a chance to beat another team and come out of the season 7-5, which is still the best record in nearly a decade for this team. We still have young talent in the program rising up. We still have guys with a lot of potential and higher ceilings. So I just don't think it's time to pack it in with this team, or to start getting ultra negative about the coaches or the quarterback or anybody else. Are there things to be desired? 100%. Is it the end of the world? No. I know that was a little bit longer than I wanted to go on football, but I just had to because there's a lot going on. Basketball team. Let's talk about the basketball team. So they go down to Princeton, in Trenton, they go down, they lose. They look absolutely like they're playing pickup basketball. They look like they're playing pickup basketball. They don't look good. They don't look organized, nothing. They have a bounce back against Boston. Gavin Griffiths drops 25 points. You see his offensive prowess. You see his offensive potential. It's there. It's good. Now they come back against the Bryant team. Now this is not a terrible Bryant team. They're 1-2 on the season, but they've scored a ton of points recently. They're not a bad team. They were tenacious. They were hungry. They wanted to play. But I thought, once again, I don't think we looked disorganized this game against Bryant, and I was there to see it. Pike comes out with a starting five of Austin Williams, Noah Fernandes, Wolf, Cliff, and Hyatt. The team came out with a stronger, I like their organization. They stuck to it for the first half of the first half. Around there. I think Austin Williams is a nice player. He's a hungry player. He can play solid defense. I don't think he's the best offensive weapon, but he's just a solid role player in there. Cliff should be much more dominant than we've seen recently, and I'm going to get to him in a second. Andre Hyatt is really, you almost live and die by him. He's an excellent weapon when he's on. When he's feeling himself, when he's feeling it, he can hit free throws, he can score points, he can get rebounds, he can change a game in some ways. But when he's cold, he really hurts you. And when he's cold, you really have a lot of head scratchers. So you kind of live and die by Hyatt right now. And that we knew that was going to happen with the transfers we saw out of the program. Who's left? And you're looking at a guy like Andre Hyatt. And we know the player he is. Has he made strides? It looks like it sometimes, and other times it looks like he still has that hot and cold streak in him. We're going to live with him for a while. I really do, and I don't know how long it's going to last. I've told you already. I like the Wolf-Cliff tandem. I think Wolf is a really nice player, and I think he adds an element to that offense with Cliff on the floor with him. He missed a lot of free throws today, and there were things to be desired in that regard, but he's a tenacious player. I like him. Gavin Griffiths finished with 5 points, 4 rebounds. And by the way, Hyatt, live or die. I mean, there were stretches this game where he seemed cold, he seemed hesitant, but he still finished with 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 19 points. I mean, you're going to live with Hyatt. I mean, solid outing from him. Gavin Griffiths showed some decent defense at times. Showed a lot of hustle. He wasn't sharp from the floor tonight. And his defense he's still got to adjust to the speed of the college game. It's not a bad thing. Gavin Griffiths he's going to be fine. He's going to be a very good player for us. But I think expecting that Cam Spencer and Paul Mulcahy transferring out and Gavin Griffiths is coming to the team and Noah Fernandes, and all of a sudden you're going to plug those holes. I don't think I understand it's only a 3-game sample. Just a 3-game sample, but I don't think that we've plugged the holes as well this year as we plugged the holes last year. Right? And last year you bring in Spencer. You're replacing bigger shoes last year. But it looked like early we were replacing him a little better. Now, granted, early last year, Spencer had trouble getting going in the three-point shooting too. He looked good on defense, but he was struggling from 3 early. So who knows what's going to happen with Fernandes. Griffiths, we saw what he could do on Friday. Let's see what if he can get back to that. I think he can. Sometimes you have an off day. But that's on the offensive side of the ball. Spencer brought a lot on the defensive side of the ball in addition to the offensive side of the ball. Paul Mulcahy brought steadiness and leadership. Now, I understand there's a lot out there, and we all saw it. Paul acted sometimes like a hothead. He did things that he shouldn't have done. Apparently he got in teammates' nerves. This is secondhand reporting with some of his outbursts and some of the things he said to people. But that leadership, that angry hunger that he had, that chip on his shoulder, Rutgers, through these first 3 games, it looks like they're desperately missing that. And it's not just about intangibles with Paul or with Spencer. The guard play in general. The guard play has not been up to par for these 3 games. Derek Simpson finally started coming on at the end of this game. He had some nice drives, and he converted his free throws, which were a huge, huge, huge reason why we toughed out this dogfight with Bryant that we had today, okay? But he's still a little out of control. There was a time we were on a run, and he wound up on a fast break with 2 guys, and I knew he was going to be out of control and miss it. He missed the layup, and it killed that momentum in that run. Now, he came back. He played good down the stretch. I'm not knocking him. But you have him, you have Fernandez, and you have JaMychal Davis getting most of the run at guard, and none of them are really playing well enough or strong enough. It was, but he was rotating guys like hockey lines. And I thought that the tandem that seemed to work and get the most traction as the game went on was when JaMychal Davis was playing with Derek Simpson. JaMychal Davis is fast. He's a good defender. He can create with his quickness a lot. Similar to Simpson, except neither one of them are necessarily consistent, very good shooters, right? So that limits them to some extent. And some of them, they can both play out of control a little bit. But it just seems like the energy that those two bring, the quickness, and especially with Davis and his defense, they bring a different element to the team that could be helpful. Noah Fernandez, he seems in control, but it just seems to me like he's struggling to create. We heard so much about Noah coming in and being a scorer and finally having somebody who could score at that point guard position. We heard so much about how much this team was going to improve its shooting. Noah is not giving us the points that we need, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hype coming in. Like finally, we're going to have a scorer at the point guard position. It's not looking like he can create at this level the way we'd really want him to create. So it causes a problem. I thought the one tandem today that I actually really liked from Pike was when he had Simpson and JaMychal Davis in there. For some reason, it seemed to work a little better at times. Maybe it was because, the defensive intensity, the quickness was there. It was more maybe for the defense on their end to have to account for all that speed. I'm not sure, but that might be the key. It might be the key to have Simpson and JaMychal Davis on the floor at the same time. It remains to be seen, but it would be nice if that were the key and we figured that out. Look, there's a few things I think that this team needs to do if we want them to be formidable this season. Number one, you just got to understand you're going to live and die by Hyatt and Griffiths and how hot or cold they are. There's going to be nights where they're hot and we win games and we come out swinging, and there's going to be games where they're ice cold and we're going to lose games. And that's not much different from, how we've been the previous seasons with these teams. Cam Spencer's hot, or, Ron Harper Jr.'s hot or cold. It goes a long way in deciding the outcome of a game. Mag needs to come back. Mawot Mag is the physical glue of the team. He can score. He's an excellent defender. He's an excellent rebounder, and he brings a certain intensity and energy to the floor that's indicative of a Pike team that we just haven't seen as much in recent memory without him on the floor. We need him on the floor. We need him to be that physical leader on the court. The other thing I think this basketball team needs to do if it wants to be formidable down the stretch is exactly what I saw happen in this game down the stretch. Right when we were finding out, is this going to be a dogfight with Bryant to the very last second? Are we going to lose to Bryant at home today? Or are we going to put them away, escape with a victory, and be able to regroup and figure out, how to get back to the drawing board and get some victories and string them together going forward without that terrible blemish on our record? Right in that time, I saw one specific player really rise to the occasion, and this player really laid it all on the line and almost willed us almost single-handedly, to a victory. And that was Cliff Amori. Cliff finished with 15 rebounds and 13 points. okay? 15 rebounds and 13 points. He finished with 4 fouls. He came close to fouling out. But he played his ass off at the end of that game. And it started when he laid out for a ball, got it from the Bryant defender, took it away from him, found the open man, laid out on the floor for a ball. And then he was slamming the ball relentlessly and putting it back in the hoop off those same bunny misses we've had recently. And his face and his energy and his mannerisms showed me that he wasn't just slamming it into the hoop because it was the easiest way to get it through or anything like that. He was slamming it because he was sick and tired of the way the team was playing, and he was sick of putting up with Bryant hanging around. And it was as if to say, enough already. I'm going to assert myself and impose my will on you, and we are going to win this game. Well, Cliff is a superstar player. At the time he was recruited, he was the highest recruit we've had. He is a great player. He has a lot of fanfare coming into the season. Even so, the video, it's the Sopranos intro like we have at the football games, except it's Cliff driving up to the rack, with a Rutgers pinky ring on and whatnot. Cliff is the leader of this team. He should be. He's a senior. We need Cliff to be the emotional locker room leader. Now, he may not have been that guy the last couple of years when there were more vocal guys in the room, but now there's a void that needs to be filled, and I think if Cliff could be that leader, galvanize that team, and Mawat Mag comes back, and he could be that physical glue, then you know what you have. Derek Simpson played within himself. When he drives to the hoop the way he did the end of that game, it creates points either on a layup or it creates points on foul shots like we saw him connect on very well down the stretch, or it creates guys being open outside that he could kick it to, including Cliff, that he could kick it to inside to finish it. You need those guys to play those roles, and then you need Hyatt and Griffiths to be hot, and that is just what it is. Even today, Hyatt scored a bunch of points. Probably the difference in the game. Even though he had spells where he was cold, he connected on shots when he needed to. Couple threes, couple nice rebounds, couple nice drives, he was playing well. And then he was playing cold. But you live and die by Hyatt and Griffiths, that's fine. But then you need Cliff to be dominant. You need Mag to be in there. You got to figure out what's going on with your guards. So basketball is back in action Wednesday against Georgetown, old Big East foe. Hopefully I'll be in the building for that. And it's another chance for the Knights to continue to coalesce around whatever their identity is going to be this year. Right now you have the nucleus of a team. A nucleus. That's what you have. It's kind of, it's loose. It's finding itself. It's got to coalesce into something solid and move forward. And, the outcome of this basketball season and what this team is going to depend almost entirely on whether that team can become a team with an identity and a solid foundation with a solid rotation and roles, or whether it's going to continue to be this, kind of jumbled mess. And I think we started to see down the stretch today that team has the potential to coalesce into something formidable. Let's see it actually happen. Let's hope it continues. Last game, it seemed like that too, when we came out in the second half and did really well, and all of a sudden it's a whole different story this game. So let's see. But, there were definitely negatives and positives to this game. The team is just not, they don't look like they've replaced the guys that they lost so far. They don't look like they've found an identity or a hierarchy in terms of scorers, defenders, players, leaders. They have to eventually do that. I don't know, they had a whole offseason, but this is what the out-of-conference schedule is also for. Let's continue to try to do that. As for football, guys, like I said, it's okay to be pissed. It's okay to be down about it. It's okay to be down on the quarterback. It's okay to be down on the coaches a little bit. But overall, just remember what the outlook for this season was. Just remember what we want to accomplish down the road. Just remember, what the trajectory is. And enjoy the ride. I mean, it's a successful season any way you slice it. We've had 2 disappointing losses now. But it's a successful season. This was the first, what the F game we had. And we're playing Penn State. They're coming off a Michigan loss, probably pissed off. That Michigan interim coach, I don't know what was with the crying and whatnot in the post game, like as if Jim Harbaugh had died or is in the hospital or something. The guy got caught cheating, got suspended. A little bit melodramatic. But anyway, Penn State's going to be pissed off coming off that loss. We're playing in their house. We're banged up. I don't know how Kyle Monunga is going to be or any of those things. I'm not expecting a win against Penn State, but we can get a win against Maryland. And that would be a great, if we beat Maryland at the end of the year, we're going to all walk out of that game feeling very good about the state of this program. So just try to keep things in perspective as best you can. If you guys haven't done so yet, one last time asking you just to click subscribe right there. I'll bring as much Rutgers content as I can. Click subscribe and join Night Watch, and be on the lookout for more content as well as more written content and some news on the horizon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go out there and just try to shake off the shakiness of the basketball team and shake off the loss that the football team endured. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy your week, and go Knights.